Hi, I'm Johnny Garrett, founder of YouTube's Craft Beer channel and a journalist across the drink sector for national papers and Good Beer Hunting. I'm taking on the big topics for cameras learn and discover, and today I'm going to be talking about independence, its definitions and its importance. Independence is one of the hottest topics in the beer industry, for drinkers at the very least. On the surface, drinking independent seems like a really easy way to drink ethically, but like everything in the world, it's not as black and white as we'd like to think. Supporting local and small businesses is a wonderful thing to do because it creates jobs and wealth in a certain area while also enriching its culture. It's a great way to ensure that more beer styles are made, more businesses are competing, and our industry is more diverse. There's also lots of satisfaction in buying a beer near or in the vicinity that it's made, and even from the people that made it. But that's not always possible. As we discussed in our video about the 𝗵𝗱𝗁𝗃, what beer is sold in our pubs is actually pretty strictly controlled, so we can't always go for the local option. So the next best thing in most drinkers' eyes is to drink independent beer, so small businesses from other parts of the country or the world. But how do we know which breweries are independent, and why does it even matter? Most beer drinkers would probably define an independent brewery as one that isn't owned by a bigger brewery or company, majority or otherwise, and that has historical inspiration. Back in the 60s and 70s, there were so many buyouts in the UK that the country went from hundreds of breweries to just 6 of them making over 75% of the beer made in the entire country. You don't need an economics degree to understand why that might have some issues. Not only did it mean more centralised production, which reduces the amount of jobs in the sector, it also reduced the variety of beers being made and increased the distance that these beers were having to travel to get to drinkers. It also created virtually a monopoly, with those 6 breweries controlling the supply and the price of beer throughout the UK. Finally, these breweries heavily invested in pub estates, which meant that they controlled the access to market, and pretty much do still today. Some of these breweries and the international macro breweries that entered the market in the 70s and 80s have also been accused of bullying tactics, getting into price wars, bribery scandals, and even worse. The revival of British brewing in the early 2000s or so brought both the industry and many beer styles back from the brink of extinction, and we went from barely 100 breweries to almost 2,500 in just 2 decades. But not all of those breweries are independent, and there's a new round of buyouts and closures of breweries and pub chains happening, and that threatens to make the industry even more competitive and even more controlled than it's ever been. So it's pretty easy to see why small and independent breweries might not just deserve our support, but actually need it. But knowing where to spend your money isn't as simple as avoiding the big guys. Several of the new smaller breweries are now owned, majority or minority, by the really big breweries. Now, getting to the bottom of that is pretty simple if you just do a bit of internet research. What's harder to find out is the breweries that are now partly or wholly owned by private equity or venture capitalists who may not align with your values. To make things even murkier, there are plenty of bigger or macro-owned breweries, or indeed venture capitalist-owned ones, that act with pretty much honesty and integrity with the best interests of the market in mind. So it's here that we have to start doing some research and thinking about what really matters. So what does independence even really mean? The idea is that it gives you the freedom to make your own decisions. With no big bosses or fiery shareholders, you can make the beer that you want to, charge what you believe is fair, and steer your business in the direction you want it to go. But none of these things ensure that an independent company is going to act ethically. You only have to look at the horrific pump clips that are still being produced in the beer industry, or you have to look at the recent Me Too movement that's going on in the beer industry and see that so many independent businesses are implicated in wrongdoing. So it is perhaps more likely that a small business might act independent, but it is by no means guaranteed. So in this video, I actually want to ask you a question. What is the point of independence if you don't use it to do good? And should we judge companies by their actions or by their owners? For me, this is what you as a drinker can do to make the industry a better place. Ask the tough questions, engage with companies, and don't just judge them on their relative level of independence. Judge them on what they do with that independence, with the freedom of choice that they have, and then vote with your wallet when you believe that a company is falling short by spending your money with companies that you think and deserve your support. If you want to learn more about the key issues in British brewing, I've done 4 more videos, all of which dig into the big concepts in British beer, and they're all available on the CAMERA Learn and Discover platform.